I'm not Arab, I'm Phoenician, Coptic, Aramaic, Yemeni, Berber, etc. is a sentence that you'll be likely to hear if you get into conversation with a person coming from the region of the Middle East or even North Africa. The first question that came into my mind when hearing this kind of remark was why? Why would anyone reject his own identity? When looking for a more specific approach, I was interested by the fact that the term Uruba, which means being Arab, is sometimes translated by a strange neologism, arabity, and arabity is something indefinite, often brought back to language, which is its main vector, but which goes well beyond mutual linguistic understanding. Very relative according to the dialects. The voice of the Arabs is not only their language, it is also a music, common subjects of concern, questions, and emotions. Arabity would be the feeling of belonging to the Arab world. However, it would be a reductive definition of Arabity because it is much more complicated than this. And let me tell you why. It is true that the definition of an Arab changed with time, and we could even believe that the feeling of being Arab has stopped evolving. But today, I really want to demonstrate that in some cases, denying its Arabity does not mean denying its origin or even identity. As a Moroccan woman, I want to talk objectively about having a Moroccan identity. Moroccan history is rich and beautiful, everyone knows that, but only if you read it as it is. And I'll tell you why. Since I was a child, I have been asking myself the question, is my country an Arab country? Many people would say yes, perhaps, without any hesitation. However, in my case, I have to admit that this question still runs in my head. And I have no answer, no exact answer to this question. In national textbooks, we teach our children that Morocco is an Arab and Muslim country whose original inhabitants, so before the rise of Islam, were the Berber sons of Mazigh. Period. To learn more, don't rely on the national education textbooks, but go and dive into the archives and books, generally very distributed, dedicated to the history of Morocco. And that's the problem. I was recently discussing with a group of research friends around the question, Arabity, our Arabity as Moroccan citizens. I asked, how are we Arabs? Have we always been? And then basically, what does it mean to be Arab? I had in front of me people who have perfectly digested the history of Morocco. But the thing is that they did not all have the same answer. And it's completely normal. There was a debate. And in a debate, the answers and opinions are very often contradictory. I wanted to know more about the subject, so I asked my grandparents. Their answers completed my arguments, and I'll tell you why. In fact, what they said was that the Moroccan population has two identities, Arab and Berber, and that these identities might be fragmented due to factors like sociological and cultural disparities. In fact, quoting them, they said, we are all Muslims and Moroccans. There is no difference between Arabs and Berbers. So basically, they said that this distinction was made by colonialism to divide the Moroccan population. Knowing my grandparents, I was expecting another answer from them. However, they proved that they had a feeling of belonging to the Moroccan identity, the real Moroccan identity. It is interesting also to analyze their thoughts because, as I said before, this question of feeling Arab is unique, even if many of us have widely diverse explanations to this concept. I also learned that our language is our identity. Language is not simply an assortment of words, but an entity that connects an individual to his family, a culture, music, beliefs, and wisdom. It is the career of history, tradition, customs, folklore from one generation to another. Without language, no culture can sustain its existence. Our language is actually our identity. Also, the important thing is that ethnicity is defined by the language you speak. And keep it in mind, ethnicity is defined by the language you speak, write, listen, and read, with the greatest fluency and most effortlessly. I'm not sure what your origin or situations are, but I'm sure that what I've said applies to you as well. However, from another side now, according to experts, the Arab conquerors of the 9th century, having been small in number, the vast majority of Moroccans are of Berber origin. Although most have become Arabic speaking, several Berber tribes have been Arabized by force very early. So now the thing is that experts agreed that there was no mass migration from the Middle East to the region of Morocco. This leads us to hop on another side of this concept of identity, which is religion. So I asked myself the question, why would anyone answer that they feel more Muslim than Arab? What does that mean? So not long ago, I read an article, a very, very good article, in which the author went on the field, so basically in Casablanca, my city, to ask children about their feeling of being Arab. He talked about an Arab world in mutation, so that's interesting, right? In which new generations perceive their religion as a way of defining their Arabity. So that's new. Basically, in North Africa, to give you some content, it is Islam that asserts itself as an element of coherence between the Arabs and the historic Berber inhabitants. So basically Mosbites, Rifains, Kabyles, according to the region from which they come, of course. So coming back to what I was saying, a quick ideological reading of the history of Morocco makes us say that without hesitation, we are Arab, and period. Let's move on. Just why are we talking about this? Just move on. This ideological interpretation has probably served at one time or another in Moroccan history to unify Moroccans under the umbrella of the Arab identity, but it is only a construction. Universal history has always taught me that there is no point in erasing an identity to build a new one instead. Identities are not buildings that can be destroyed and rebuilt at any time. They are accumulation. They are a constantly evolving process in which nothing is lost. The Arab component of Moroccan identity is essential. It is very essential. But it must not obscure the Amazigh component, nor the Jewish one, because as a nation we are one, we are united, nor the African or even North African one. If part of the Moroccan are unaware of this, it is not by chance, but by the teaching and education they receive, which are sometimes biased. It is true that with a complex background, like in Morocco, debate is always present in a country. But you need to remember that each identity is unique. Thank you.